In Cuba, over 314,000 students will resume learning activities on Monday. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus to self-quarantine after being in contact with an infected person. Iran's foreign ministry said Monday it will focus on the actions of the new U.S. administration rather than who wins the White House. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada for the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. Over 314,000 students will resume learning activities on Monday in Cuba's capital, Havana, to conclude the school year interrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Education authorities said that health protocols will be observed, which include mandatory use of face masks, the setup of pedestrian crossings, the prohibition of entry to students and workers with respiratory systems. The 2020-2021 school year will also begin in most provinces, except for Pinar del Río, Ciego de Ávila and Santi Spíritus, which have experienced a sharp surge in COVID-19 cases. Cuba's national television broadcasted lectures from the different levels of general education and a review for university applicants during the halt to educational activities. On Monday, Brazil reported over 200 new COVID-19 related deaths in the last 24 hours, surpassing a death toll of more than 160,000. The latest report ratifies Brazil as the second nation with the highest COVID-19 death toll worldwide, preceded only by the United States. To date, Brazilian health minister reports more than 5.5 million confirmed cases of the infection, making the South American nation the third most affected in terms of confirmed cases in the world. Some Central American countries are preparing for Tropical Storm Ida, the 29th depression to form in the Caribbean Sea this season. According to the United States National Hurricane Center, life-threatening storm surge, damaging winds, flash flooding, and landslides are expected across portions of Central America. Ida is expected to slow motion near the northeastern coast of Nicaragua, will exacerbate potentially catastrophic wind, storm surge, and flooding impacts over the portions Nicaragua and Honduras. Also, storm surge could be as high as 12 to 18 feet above normal tide levels along the Nicaragua coast, and rainfall could be up to 35 inches for other affected parts of the region. This Tuesday will be the official U.S. election day, although 94 million people have already voted in an attempt to avoid big crowds in times in which COVID-19 is skyrocketing the country. The nation is already on course for its early voting highest electoral turnout rate in more than a century. According to the U.S. Election Project, the state of California has cast the most votes, 11 million, while Texas has received 9.7 million ballots. Meanwhile, candidates continue their final sprint. Both politicians are focusing on battleground states. President and Republican candidate Donald Trump will hold rallies in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. His Democratic rival Joe Biden will campaign in Pennsylvania and Ohio ahead of Tuesday's poll. And in the United States, the leading infectious disease expert, Anthony Fauci, has criticized again Trump's management of the pandemic in Washington, post-review, a day before the official election day. The White House accused Dr. Fauci of playing politics. The expert said that the U.S. was in for a whole lot of hurt and that you could not possibly be positioned more poorly, referring to the fall and winter that will push people to stay in closed spaces. When asked about the approaches on the two presidential candidates, Dr. Fauci said Mr. Biden was taking it seriously from a public health perspective, while Mr. Trump was looking at it from different perspective, the economy and reopening of the country. He said the U.S. needed to make an abrupt change in public health practices and behaviors. According to data collected by Johns Hopkins University, deaths in the U.S. have now passed 230,000, while more than 9 million cases have been registered. The COVID-19 pandemic has not only created a crisis in the United States healthcare system, but has also forced the sharpest contraction of the country's economy in decades. A Columbia University study suggests that if unemployment rates increase to 30% for the rest of the year, as one estimate from the Federal Reserve projects, more than 21 million individuals will become impoverished, marking the highest recorded rate of poverty since at least 1967.
Parks are now home to thousands of U.S. citizens like Henry, who lost his job amid the closure of businesses as a result of the pandemic.
I am trying to fix my situation, but the economy as it is, it's hard. I'm in construction, but with the current challenges, I just try to survive one day at a time.
According to data from the Center on Poverty and Social Policy at Columbia University, the percentage of people living in poverty before the pandemic hit the United States was 15%, but this figure has jumped to 16.7% in September.
Millions of those who are in the middle class are vulnerable and at risk of falling into poverty.
In many cities like New York, it's common to see homeless people or those recently unemployed standing in long lines to receive care packages or donations. People are now forced to search for food to feed their families.
The job closed down and said everybody go on unemployment. I filed for unemployment, never got anything, so I had to be here in the shelter.
The economy for most working people is completely destroyed because of his incompetence. He has used the presidency for his own enrichment.
The Columbia University study states more than 55 million people are earning less than $26,200 a year, which is what the federal government considers the poverty line. Despite this, Congress postponed a new aid program. The Republican Senate blocked the vote by suspending sessions until November 9th. Now, President Donald Trump assures there will be another stimulus check of $1,200, but after the election. As such, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is accusing Republicans of using the initiative as a political tool.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Welcome back. The WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus announced late Sunday that he was self-quarantining after someone he had been in contact with tested positive for COVID-19. The Director General has been at the forefront of the United Nations Health Agency efforts to battle the pandemic, which has claimed nearly 1.2 million lives and infected nearly 47 million people worldwide. Tedros made the announcement on his Twitter account, stating that he was identified as a contact of someone who has tested positive for COVID-19. The Director General currently has no symptoms and is feeling well. Tedros will self-quarantine over the coming days in line with the WHO protocols and work from home. On Monday, Germany led a further tightening of coronavirus restrictions in Europe that have triggered anger and frustration across the continent, while the COVID-19 crisis in the United States is deepening. The virus has infected more than 46 million people worldwide, with close to 1.2 million deaths, and the acute outbreaks in Europe and America sparking further alarm about the state of the already devastated global economy. To curb the spike in Germany, Chancellor Angela Merkel has ordered a round of shutdowns from Monday until the end of the month. Germans will not be confined to their homes, but bars, cafes and restaurants must close, as well as theaters, operas and cinemas. And in France, the government announced the closure of non-essential product sections in supermarkets after small traders complained about being closed. The measure will come into effect this Tuesday. The prohibition is implemented in supermarkets located in the confined areas. For its part, the Federation of Commerce and Distribution had already expressed its total incomprehension and its opposition to a possible closure of non-food sections of the large supermarkets in the face of requests from small business and some governments. The Portuguese government intends to declare a health emergency, enable stricter curbs to be imposed in the fight against the surge in coronavirus infections. Prime Minister Antonio Costa said Monday that the government proposed to declare an emergency for preventive purposes and to avoid legal uncertainties. As of Wednesday, a partial lockdown will be established. Measures already in place in parts of northern Portugal will be expanded from Wednesday to cover 7.1 million people. On Monday, Portugal also held a national mourning day to honor its more than 2,500 victims of COVID-19. To date, the European nation has confirmed more than 144,000 COVID-19 cases. UK opposition leader Keir Starmer criticized Monday the government for not learning what Starmer said was the key lesson of the first wave of coronavirus, that early, decisive action saved lives and jobs.
Coronavirus, but I do blame it for the way it's been handled. I can't forgive the catalogue of mistakes that have cost lives and livelihoods. The central lesson of the first wave was ignored. That if you are to control this virus, you have to act early and decisively. And that if you don't, the cost to people's health and the health of the economy is much, much worse. Make no mistake, the Chancellor's name is all over this. His decision to block a circuit breaker, to dismiss it as a blunt instrument, and to pretend that you can protect the economy without controlling the virus, will now mean that businesses have to close for longer. More people will lose their jobs.
Italy's Prime Minister proposed Monday a regional approach that will target the hardest hit areas instead of a national lockdown despite spiking COVID-19 cases.
Unfortunately, museums and exhibitions will close. We are also expecting to reduce by 50% the capacity of public transportation, and we are planning to reduce the mobility from and to the regions with a high level of infections, except if traveling for work, study, health, or situation of necessity. We are also thinking for the entire national territory to close shopping malls during the weekend, with the exception of pharmacies, grocery stores, tobacco shops, and kiosks inside the malls. According to the plan I have set out, the next prime ministerial decree will assign areas with a different risk level for which there will be assigned different levels of restrictions.
A Dutch metro train was saved from disaster Monday when it smashed through a safety barrier, but was prevented from plummeting into water by the sculpture of Welltail. The driver of the train, who was the only person on board, was unharmed in the incident, which happened just after midnight at Spijkenis, near the port city of Rotterdam. The front carriage was left hanging 10 meters above the water, held only by the giant silver-colored sculpture. The cause of the crash is still being investigated. A team of experts, including the architect of the sculpture, are now on site to work out how to safely remove the train.
No, we don't know what happened at this moment. We are doing research, but the research can actually start after the station is going away. So the police is doing the investigation now. So the driver is going to the police station to ask him about his story. So this is a normal procedure for this kind of accidents, and it's only one piece of information that we are getting to get a full picture of what happened. There's a team of experts now making plans to remove the train station. How long this will take, we actually don't really know at this moment. So I'm not guessing today, so maybe it will still be there tomorrow. But
And a small brush fire that started at a refugee center on Greece's eastern Asian island of Samos has burned about 15 tents but caused no injuries, Greek authorities said on Monday. The fire department said the blaze started Monday morning in low-growing vegetation near the camp and was brought under control soon after. The Migration and Asylum Ministry said the tents that were burned had been evacuated and no injuries were reported. It said the reasons for the blaze remain unclear. The camp of Samos is by far the most overcrowded, with more than 4,200 people in a facility built to house just under 650 people.
We succeeded in getting it under control quickly, safely evacuating the people who live in the tents to the stadium across the area, and secured that the fire would not cross to the main section of the reception center. At this moment, the fire has been extinguished. We have secured the perimeter, and our investigators are already investigating the cause and possible suspects for the fire.
And we'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Iran's Foreign Ministry said Monday it will focus on the actions of the new U.S. administration rather than who wins the White House. Since unilaterally withdrawing from a landmark nuclear deal with Tehran and world powers in 2018, the Republican administration of President Donald Trump has reimposed and extended crippling sanctions on Iran. Trump's Democratic challenger, Joe Biden, has said he wants to use the 2015 nuclear accord as a starting point for follow-on negotiations with Tehran. Iranian officials have repeatedly said they favor no specific candidate in the race, while also calling for a return to the nuclear accord, the lifting of sanctions, and compensation for damages caused.
Our position is clear. We do not look at what happens tomorrow. We will be watching the approach of the new U.S. administration, whichever party it's from. We view tomorrow's election in this framework, and more than the result, we will pay attention to the actions of the next U.S. administration.
On Monday, at least 8 people were wounded by gunmen stormed at Kabul University during an Iranian book fair, firing shots and sending students fleeing. Tariq Arian, a spokesperson for the Ministry of Interior, said the enemies of Afghanistan, the enemies of education, entered Kabul University. Arian added that the security forces are in the area trying to control the situation and are advancing carefully to prevent any harm to the students. The Taliban said they were not involved, but several education centers have been attacked over the years by extremist groups such as Islamic State. Hamid Obaidi, a spokesperson for the Ministry of Higher Education, stated that the gunfire erupted when the government officials were expected to arrive for the opening of the book event. So far, several people have been rescued from the university campus. More than 50,000 people took part Monday in the biggest demonstration yet in Bangladesh over French President Emmanuel Macron's statements. The rally, which started at Bangladesh's biggest mosque, was stopped from getting close to the French embassy, where security has been stepped out amid mounting tensions over Macron's comments. The march was more than 2 kilometers long, and crowds carried effigies of Macron, caricatures and fake coughing for the French president. Protesters chanted, "We are all soldiers of the Prophet, we are not afraid of bullets or bombs, and Macron, you are in danger." Similar demonstrations have been held in many Muslim-majority countries. Around 3,000 people also demonstrated Monday outside the French embassy in Jakarta in Indonesia. Residents began cleaning up Monday after Typhoon Goni lashed the Philippines over the weekend. At least 16 people were killed and about 13,000 shanties and houses were damaged or swept away in the east of the country. Goni blasted into Catanduanes province at dawn Sunday at a super typhoon with sustained winds of 225 kilometers per hour and gusts of 280 kilometers per hour. But the storm weakened considerably after making landfall and shifted direction to spare the capital, Manila, before blowing out into the South China Sea. The typhoon also devastated the nearby province of Albay, where heavy rains washed down boulders and mud flows from Mayo volcano, engulfing about 150 houses in a single community in the town of Guinobatang. And police in Tanzania arrested the leader of the country's main opposition party and several other top political leaders ahead of planned protests on Monday. Authorities say they detained Freeman Mbowe, the chairman of the opposition party Chadema, and other 6 opposition leaders. Their arrests coming after the East African Nations Electoral Commission declared President John Magufuli the winner of Wednesday's poll. Over the weekend, the leaders of Chadema and another opposition party, Act Wazalendo, urged supporters to come out in large numbers to peacefully protest and demand the new elections. However, Tanzania's National Electoral Commission has dismissed the opposition claims of fraud. Also in Zanzibar, a semi-autonomous territory that elects its own leader, the swearing-in of the new elected president is held in Stone Town. The CCM candidate Hussein Ali Mwinyi is sworn as the Zanzibar's 8th president. And in Georgia, following the announcement of the preliminary results of Georgia's parliamentary elections, opposition parties have taken to the streets to protest the ruling party's victory. According to the Central Election Commission, the Georgian Dream Party had received 48.1% of the Saturday's vote, with more than 99% of ballots counted. The biggest opposition alliance, led by the United National Movement Party, got 27.1%, while the ruling party said they won enough seats in the 150-seat parliament to form a government. The opposition claimed the election was rigged and refused to recognize the results. Opposition leaders say they will continue with the protests until their demands are met.
Overwhelming consensus inside the opposition, and I would say inside the critical mass of the public, is that this kind of a process with mass bribery of voters, intimidation and violence and manipulation do not represent the will of Georgian people. So the demand is that these elections cannot represent the government of Georgia for the next 4 years. The normal path forward is to have a new elections. That's where the consensus is right now.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. Also, you can join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.